Dear participants, hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome to this third webinar of a series of 3. This is the last session today. We will receive 3 presentations this afternoon. The first one from Mr. Yoshiyuki Ohno from Japan. The second one from Ms. Cecilia Requejo-Jackman from New Zealand. And lastly, from Mr. Peter Scotting from the United Kingdom. Before we receive the presentations, we'd just like to announce to you that there will be no interpretation provided for this webinar. The chat function will be monitored to address technical matters. And we will have a question and answers session at the end of the 3 presentations, where you will be able to ask your questions. You also have the possibility to ask your questions orally. Just raise your electronic hand and we will give you the floor. The meeting will be recorded and it will be made available on the UPOV website later today. However, the Q&A session will not be recorded. Before we start the presentations, I pass the floor to my colleague, Mr. Leontino Tavera, who will make a brief introduction. Thank you very much.
Greetings, dear participants. To set the scene, I'd like to recall a few steps taken prior to this webinar, starting with the survey of members of UPOV on their policies and practices that could prevent international cooperation on DUS examination. The survey of UPOV members revealed that nearly half of the UPOV membership does not accept phytosanitary matters as reason to delay the submission of plant material for DUS test reports. And from the respondents that do accept to take over test reports when the applicants cannot submit plant material due to phytosanitary issues, some of them indicated that plant material was required in any way before granting a right, so a DUS test report could be taken over. The plant material would still be required prior to granting a title. When considering measures that could be taken to promote further international cooperation and the takeover of test reports, the Administrative and Legal Committee discussed the possibility of revising UPOV guidance to include a mention encouraging members of the union to take over test reports when applicants could not submit plant material for examination due to phytosanitary matters. However, this proposal was not agreed upon at later meetings. So in relation to phytosanitary matters that can delay the submission of plant material, and here quoting both the Administrative and Legal Committee as well as the Technical Committee, it was agreed that UPOV should make space and organize webinars such as this one for UPOV members to share experiences with the situations when phytosanitary matters could delay the submission of plant material and delay granting of breeders' rights. The CAJ in particular noted that this matter should not become a reason to reject an application. That is, an application should not be rejected on the basis that the plant material was late due to phytosanitary matters. The impact of phytosanitary matters is that all UPOV members are subject to phytosanitary regulations, and both the applicant as well as the examination authority must comply with these matters when importing plant material for DUS examination. The possible impact of these measures is that if the requirements can be complied with within reasonable effort, then there will be no matter for importing the material. But even if the requirements can be met within reasonable effort, but the applicant is not diligent, that could trigger problems with importing the plant material. Whereas if the plant material is not even allowed to enter the country, then, or if the restrictions cannot be met within reasonable effort, such refusal would be beyond the control of the applicant. So, having set the scene, I would like to pass the floor on to our first presenter today at the webinar, Mr. Yoshiyuki Ohno from Japan. Please, Yoshiyuki-san, you have the floor.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, participants. I am Yoshiyuki Ohno from Plant Variety Protection Office of Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries of Japan. So today, I would like to introduce Japan's case of phytosanitary matters that prevent or delay submission of plant material. So today's my presentation will have 4 main topics. First topic, case study focusing on foreign application. Second topic, we will have the example of condition of quarantine. The third topic is surrounding circumstances for DUS examination. The last topic is identified issues and conclusion. So the first topic, case study focusing on foreign applications. The case 1, delay in import of plant material for fruit tree propagation from the country A due to legal representative issue preparing the import application. So you can see this table as an outline of this case. So in the 2012, application was filed from foreign country A through initially legal representative in Japan. So in 2016, it became apparent that initially legal representative in Japan has not enough specialized skill to import plant material with phytosanitary inspection for DUS preparation. So due to various circumstances by applicant, it was needed to change secondary legal representative in Japan. So in 2017, new secondary legal representative in Japan was assigned and started to import plant material with post-entry quarantine inspection, which means isolation quarantine inspection in Japan for DUS examination arrangement. In 2019, the post-entry quarantine inspection was finished by a plant protection station. So in 2020, propagation of plant material, application of the plant material and obtained plant material of similar variety by a secondary legal representative in Japan. It was started setting up the US on-site examination field. So in 2026, this year or after, I expect that the US examination will be done. So this case, the circumstance of this case, it was dependent on capability of legal representative to import plant material with quarantine inspection procedure. So the second case, import prohibition on plant material for fruit trees propagation. So in 2016, application filed from country B, plant protection station had been prohibiting import of fruit trees plant material from country B. So we don't have any prospect for the DUS examination. We are continuing to wait for importing plant material for the DUS examination. So there is no solution for the DUS examination for the application from the country B. However, it makes us wonder how do we make a solution if import prohibition will be continued eternally. Also, it makes us wonder how do breeders exercise plant breeders' rights or plant prohibited to the import in Japan. Also, it makes us wonder how do the breeders make economic activities in the market for the plant prohibited from import in Japan. So time will healing everything. I'm not sure at this moment. So I can summarize case 1 and case 2. So as different phytosanitary conditions at same crop by country. So you can see the case of the country A is required inspection, including specific phytosanitary measures by export country A before export to Japan, and post-entry quarantine, which is isolation quarantine inspection in Japan, will be done by Japan Plant Protection Station before open to the DUS examination field trial. So this means if the legal representative in Japan has sufficient knowledge to import plant material to Japan, it is not subject to conduct the DUS examination. So on the other hand, you can see case of the country B is prohibited exporting apple graft to Japan. So we don't have any solution to conduct the DUS examination. So second, we can move second topic, which is example of condition quarantine. So I'd like to introduce the quarantine control of plant material by plant protection station. This table, first column is plant material or cuttings for fruit trees, including plant used as fruit trees rootstocks, which are inspection scope for the strawberry, trifoliate, orange, raspberry, blackberry, camnut, chestnut, walnut, blueberry, almond, plum, apricot, cherry, blacknut, pea, grapevine, orange, grapefruit, pomelo, lemon, yamberry, flowering, crab apple, and apple. So I can say the second column is plant material including cuttings, which is inspection scope for the pineapple. The third column is fresh tubers root, fresh tubers, which are inspection scope for the sweet potato and potato. The fourth column is fresh stems, leaves, and their underground parts, which is inspection scope for the sugarcane. The last column, fifth column, is bulbs, including expanded leaf bud, which are inspection scope for the iris, anemone, amaryllis, arum, glanthus, gladiolas, gloxinia, crocus, Shinigia, dahlia, tulip, hyacinth, hippeastrum, phrygia, begonia, lily, and ranunculus. Sorry. Japan quarantine regulation, and also you can see the bottom sentence. Japanese quarantine regulation has exceptional measure which are for experiment and research purposes. It is designated for the display and storage as a specimens in public facilities such as museum, zoo, botanical garden, aquarium, etc., and for use as evidence in criminal investigations and for the propagation of melon fly control in insect control institutions for the implementation of the melon fly research control project. So please note that the DUS examination for the plant variety protection does not fall under the category for the research purpose in the exclusionary measures. So we have to wait for the prohibiting plants to import to Japan. So we can move to the third topic, surrounding circumstances for the DUS examination. You can see the legal concept. Japanese plant breeders' rights system follows first to file rule. The Plant Variety Protection and Seed Act mentions that first to file rule, Article 9, first paragraph, if two or more applications for the variety registration have been filed in relation to an identical variety or to varieties that are not clearly distinguishable from each other by the expression of their characteristics, only the applicant that filed the application for variety registration first is entitled to obtain the registration. This is our legal concept. So next point, we will move the DUS implementation. Rules for the DUS implementation. Rules for the DUS examination. The Article 4 mentioned about the order of the examination. In principle, the examination shall be conducted for each type of plant species in the order of filed application. However, this does not apply if the examination is suspended due to the request for the materials to applicant or for the correction, whether the disasters, etc. So we frequently face challenges that earlier application couldn't start the DUS examination because of import prohibition. Meanwhile, a later application was forwarded for DUS examination ahead of the earlier application. So next discussion point is national test guidelines. International harmonization is important for the cooperation in the DUS examination to make progress. DUS examination and grant plant breeders' rights speedy. So the first point is some plant species have strategic national and regional characteristics in addition to UPOV characteristics. Next point is countries have different timing for the adoption and to reflect the revision of UPOV test guideline in their national test guideline, which makes it hard to accept the US report. So we can move last topic, identified issues and conclusion for the DUS examination. You can see the two tables, issues and features relation to the resolving measures. So the first issues, possible to import plant material. The feature is submission of plant material tends to be delayed due to not sufficient awareness of plant protection procedure. So resolving measure is to instruct to the applicant who need to have correct understanding of export and import plant material with procedure of export and import phytosanitary inspection. Next issues, second issues, impossible to import plant material. Feature is submission of plant material to be prevented. So no real plans for the DUS and PBR. The resolving measure, waiting patiently for the import permission and or to seek a possibility of international cooperation. However, no real plans to be considered, no dispute. The third issue is first to file rule. So feature is unable to DUS examination in order of the application. So the resolving measure is later application will be forwarded for the DUS examination ahead of the earlier application with careful verification to grant PBR. The last issue, test guidelines. So feature is some plant species have strategic national and regional features added in the national TG. A different timing of revision of test guidelines. Some countries use different version when the application filed at different timing. So resolving measure is important to balance national strategy and international harmonization. To avoid the import problem, rapid decision-making of international cooperation is necessary to avoid DUS stuck. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ohno. I'd like to turn the floor now to Ms. Cecilia Requejo-Jackman, who's Senior PVR Examiner, Plant Variety Rights Office, Intellectual Property Office of New Zealand. Cecilia, please go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to share our experience on how phytosanitary matters impact the DUS examination. Go next. I'll give you a brief look at our office. Oh, it's not going. What's happening here? Oh, yeah. Okay, so the New Zealand office at a glance. Our office has four full-time examiners and an expert PVR lead, so we are a small office. At any one time, we have in the order of 360 varieties under examination. So it's not coming up. What's going on? It's not coming up, my bullet points. I'm not sure what's going on. Oh, there we go. I have to click on the other screen. So 360 varieties under examination, and they are divided in approximately these percentages: 33% fruit, 30% ornamental, 25% agricultural and pasture varieties, and 12% vegetable varieties. So approximately 65% of varieties are of foreign breeder. So that's the majority of the plant material we run trials on is on imported plant material. But New Zealand is risk adverse. So as you know, New Zealand is a successful producer and exporter of fruit and crops. Most of you are familiar with gold kiwi fruit and successful several apple cultivars. So as a nation, we're in a unique position to strive to keep disease and pests out of the country. And it is the Ministry of Primary Industries' role to protect our primary industry and the environment from exotic pests and diseases through phytosanitary rules and biosecurity control measures. Our office has no function in this role. And so these phytosanitary restrictions directly affect our DUS trials. These strict biosecurity rules are provided by the Ministry of Primary Industries, and they issue import plant health standards for the importation of plant species. So they restrict the timely availability of plant material for DUS purposes. Foreign bred vegetatively propagated varieties are primarily impacted, mostly fruit and ornamental. So applicants of foreign bred varieties must know that importation is time consuming, can be costly, and there can be delays. MPI issues a risk assessment document for several genera and species. And if there is one already drafted for the species that the applicant wants to bring into the country, it will be really helpful, and it will really streamline the importation of quarantine process. The country of origin matters. Quarantine protocol varies depending on the country of origin. Quarantine level required matters. If level 3 is the strictest level required for the species the applicant wishes to bring into the country, that will mean longer quarantine times. The number and space in quarantine facilities, this is usually run by the Ministry of Primary Industries, and so the space and the number of facilities is limited and therefore causes delays. Some nurseries have been certified facilities, but only for level 1 of quarantine. So a reminder that importation and quarantine are the responsibility of the applicant, and the office has no role in this. So often we receive emails and sometimes phone calls from prospective applicants looking for guidance on the importation process so they can make plant material available for testing. And we just direct them to the ministry's website because we have no role, as I said. So, but applicants must ensure the availability of plant material for the US testing in a reasonable time. So for our office, there are 3 scenarios. The first one, if importation and quarantine has been completed prior to application for protection, then that means the plant material is available for the US testing. So the office makes a decision on the testing arrangement, which initially depends on the crop. Our office operates using a spectrum of testing arrangements, which go from breeder testing, testing at applicant's property, normally used for ornamental plants, central testing used for agricultural, apple testing, roses as well, all the way to basing the New Zealand decision entirely on a foreign test report. In scenario 2, when we have an existing application for protection, but plant material is not available. So in our technical questionnaire, we have a section on the availability of plant material and the importation timeline. So we know that importation and or quarantine are in progress. So what we do in this case, we as an office recognize that delays can occur during the importation process. So we set out reasonable deadlines, realistic and achievable for plant material to be made available for DUS purposes. The setting of deadlines must have flexibility and take account of matters outside the control of the applicant or the office. However, if this deadline cannot be met, it's up to the applicant to contact the PBR office and explain the situation. The contact should be as early as practicable and not close to or after the set deadline. Our legislation provides the possibility for the office to lapse an application if plant material is not supplied. The last scenario, plant material is available out of quarantine, but there are post-quarantine issues that impact the availability of plant material. So it is the expectation that access to suitable plant material for DUS purposes will occur as soon as possible after the release from quarantine. However, it is possible the applicants may encounter difficulties during the initial propagation out of quarantine. So plant material may not be displaying their typical plant characteristics due to environmental stress or fumigation or treatments and the material might have been subjected to during quarantine office. So our office may extend the deadlines on request from the applicant, provided that the reason for the delay is justifiable and explained in full. So how do we administer potential phytosanitary delays? When we receive an application for protection for a foreign bred variety, the first step, our office conducts an initial assessment of the species of the variety. We look at our testing experience. We look at existence of domestic breeding activity and the availability of example and similar varieties in the country. But we are pragmatic. We recognize the possible delays due to biosecurity restrictions. Our legislation allows for flexibility and practicality at establishing deadlines. But there could be long delays due to importation factors or prohibiting factors. In the situation where there is a reduced likelihood of access to plant material in a reasonable time, consideration could be given to the use of a foreign test report for the New Zealand decision, if this is available, of course. We need to be careful as an office not to make the time to import the only variable of the decision to run or not a DUS trial. So applicants also must be aware that if the New Zealand decision was made on a foreign test report, the protected variety then becomes a variety of common knowledge, and it could be requested to be included in a variety collection in a future DUS growing trial. And our legislation has provision for the lapsing of application and cancellation of rights if the variety is not made available for PBR purposes. So in conclusion, it is the office's expectation that applicants will keep the PBR office informed of progress regarding the importation of their plant material. And this includes information on their own importation timeline, the Ministry of Primary Industries importation requirements, and any other relevant matters. An application will not be permitted to continue if the wait for available plant material is unreasonably prolonged or the testing timetable is indefinite. So the key element is communication. We have flexibility in our legislation, plus the benefits of being a small country office where applicants can contact the examiner directly and explain the reasons for the delays. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I wanted to discuss today the phytosanitary measures that impact access to plant material for DUS examination, as been discussed by my colleagues. But I also wanted to detail more closely the impact that this has and the actual issues that we're facing in the United Kingdom with some of these import-export phytosanitary measures. And a little bit of background. So my name is Pete Scotting. I'm the Plant Varieties and Seeds Office Manager for Variety Listing and Plant Breeders' Rights. But I have a background in the Plant Health and Seeds Inspectorate in the UK. For many years I was an inspector, and then I was a regional manager for a large team in the southeast of the UK. And so I have first-hand experience of these phytosanitary measures. And I just wanted to suggest that these are of concern to the UK because not only for the US examination, but it was a frequent issue in plant health that we would see, I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but certainly on a weekly basis, issues affecting the import and export of material. And so it's a considerable concern, but we'll go through some of those now. And so the recurring themes that we faced in import and export of seed and plant material, both for the US and for other uses in the UK. So these are recurring themes across all import and export. So I think, as been discussed and mentioned earlier, these are recurring themes that we'll see elsewhere, I'm sure, and are probably apparent to other countries as well, not just the UK. So courier-related storage delays and access issues. This is a common issue in the United Kingdom. There are many couriers that will not take live material. I think they suggest on their websites anything that bleeds or lives and breathes, they will not touch. And so that's a concern, obviously. We have limited access to couriers that will effectively move material on our behalf. Lost consignments again, so those couriers that can move this material. We have had in the past consignments that have gone entirely missing, which is incredibly worrying. And I chatted to a breeder recently who suggested that they had 2 pallets of material that had been lost. They demanded to come to the warehouses to look for material, and they found material and it carried on its way. So there again, logistical issues, I'm sure. As has been mentioned by my colleagues here, that incorrect or documentation for phytosanitary measures, this is one of the biggest ones for the phytosanitary certificates. Particularly in the UK, the requirement for phytosanitary measures has changed, what I suggest, in the last 6 years. And so that has been difficult, I think, for many import exporters to keep up with the changes. That has caused issues, and I'll detail some of those later on. Incorrect naming and or EPO codes. So EPO is a European Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization, and they require EPO codes to be used in the phytosanitary certificates and the documentation, and often those are incorrect or missed, and that causes an issue. Incomplete or incorrect import declaration, so import of products, animals, food and feed systems, which is our APHA system. It's very detailed on what the requirements are, and if you miss anything or if you spell anything incorrectly, it will flag an issue and that won't continue. As I alluded to earlier, we had a slight change in our requirements a few years ago, and the border control post inspection had a big backlog due to what we have termed in the UK the border target operating model. So that was a change in what we need to look at, and we set up border control posts. They were manned by increased import inspection staff, and the requirements changed due to our change in relationships with the European Union. EU import changes again, so Traces NT, I'm sorry and apologies for this being packed with acronyms. I've done my best to suggest what they mean. So Traces NT isn't actually an acronym, but it's our trade platform which allows authorities in Great Britain to issue the PC, the phytosanitary certificate information, directly into the Traces NT platform, providing a safe and secure method of transmitting phytosanitary information to EU member states. So instead of physically sending the phytosanitary certificate, this is an e-certificate that passes through the Traces NT platform. And the requirement within that is responsible for load validation, and so that oftentimes is an issue for us. So the naming a responsible person can be an issue, and if there isn't the correct naming of someone responsible for the load, that will hold up import and export movement. And a declaration of import, that's another requirement that also can cause a problem if that's not declared correctly again. And UK customs hold-ups. This is a recurring theme. We should see this continually in plant health, and we still do. UK customs are the border force in the United Kingdom, and they take precedence over any other movement of material through the borders. And so we take 4th or 5th place to UK customs. And so we rely upon them to move material through to help us with fast tracking of materials sometimes, but if they're busy on other inspections, that can cause delays for us. There's other issues related to that as well, which I will go into. So that was the common themes. I'm sure these attracted lots of people, and then I'll talk about here some more examples, exact examples of delays we've seen. So export delays due to the CHED, again, Common Health Entry Documentation. Seed being sent to the EU is being delayed because the consignee was not registered or validated at Traces NT, which is blocking release. So again, this probably points to our change in relationship with the European Union 6 years ago, and the requirement now has changed, and you have to be registered in the Trace NT system. It's not always abundantly clear to those sending material that this is a requirement. And as I think our Japanese colleague mentioned earlier, awareness and detailed guidance for our importers and exporters would be much well received. Also, I would suggest that that material there is not often looked at. UK border inefficiencies. So, you know, border targeted operating model has caused inefficiencies and delays in import material reaching its destination. Importers have experienced inconsistent checks at varying points of entry and additional paperwork requirements and increased costs. So, you know, these border target operating models took some time to get together and to put in place, and they cause concerns not for us, but also for customs and other operating agencies at the point of entry because of the change of requirements. Material that previously wasn't needed to be checked or had fewer checks now required a higher level of inspection. And so that caused inefficiencies and backlogs, as I previously mentioned. That has been a concern. Customs issues. UK importers have experienced destruction of seed material by border control officials, and no additional source material is available. This can cause breeders a problem. So again, this is a concern with customs, and quite often it's very difficult to understand from customs, from couriers, from other agencies that are involved in material. So there's probably 5 agencies in the UK who may have a vested interest in inspection of material that comes into the UK. It isn't just customs, it isn't just the Plant Health and Seeds Inspector, there are others that are interested. And it can be very difficult to ascertain who has a hold on this material for whatever purposes. And quite often we get calls from irate importers, exporters, suggesting that the material is held, it's our fault. It could transpire that it's customs, it's colleagues and other agencies who are holding the material for other testing purposes. And so it's not always clear why it's held and it's holding it. Exportation of import. This is adding extra complexity and causing delays for UK organisations exporting seed into the EU. We have a case where seed destined for the EU had been held since January the 21st. That's obviously a major concern for us. And there was an increased importation fee of €137 on that declaration. And so this causes delays, further cost, and this has been a concern for us. Import delays. So seed from the UK has been held at different areas in the UK. So Stanford La Hope, which is in Essex in the UK, is a large port there. A seed consignment from the EU stuck at Castle Donington in Derbyshire. These delays were due to APHA import backlogs and UPS storage fees. So sometimes these are combined. So as suggested, the border operating model caused some backlogs, and that's combined with courier. UPS, as we know, is a courier, and storage fees there as well. So it can be a combination of issues preventing the material from moving in. And often, I would say sometimes, maybe not often, we experience breeders travelling to countries to collect seed to avoid customs and courier delays. That has been the case. Certainly, I've only been in this position for 2 years. I've seen a number of times where breeders have taken material themselves to the testing stations, or vice versa, they've received material from testing stations to bring back to the UK. That's not to say that any of these controls are being navigated. There's nothing just happening here. They have the required paperwork and they've done the exacting requirements to move the material. But it's simpler for them to take it as hand luggage with the Phytosanitary certificate and corresponding documentation, and take it through the green channel at customs and suggest they have that material. It can be quicker. Seed delay due to missing or incorrect traces or responsible for load registration. So again, this is another one, delays for EU consignees requirement, responsible for load. I mentioned that earlier. This is a fairly new requirement and it's not always clear who that person should be, but if it's not correctly attributed to someone, and it's a communication channel, and so if that person doesn't understand what the requirement is and they're trying to be communicated with to move this material into the UK, there's an issue and it won't move forward. Courier choices adversely affecting clearance times and consignments even lost or destroyed during handling. So again, I touched on that one earlier on, and the same with the customs, PHSI carriers, who's holding the material. This is an issue. And with the best will, sometimes the carriers don't know themselves. They know there's a hold, but they don't want to get involved in delays with customs or with other UK agencies that hold the material. Additional testing requirement on UK entry, so additional testing required when already tested, causing further delay. So again, this is an outcome of the board operating target model and the increased testing requirements in the UK currently. Here's a quick snapshot of some of the non-compliance we've seen. This is only for seeds, and this isn't directly attributed to the US. This is just across the board. So you see 157 in 2025, and one entry by agent, one EU requested incorrect ADs, and one who registered themselves as a toy company, obviously prohibiting their company. And so the potential consequences and impacts, as others suggested, you know, these are far-reaching and damaging, both economically and for the movement of innovation in the UK, and provide a streamlined process for our breeders to get material into the ground. So unavailability or delayed release of seed and test material on field sites delays the drilling and sowing window. And as we know, these are very finite windows, and if you miss those, there can be the resultant loss of a full trial cycle, a delay in variety advancement, and marketing launch by 12 months. And it's obvious to us in the UK that once the testing is done, our breeders want to market that material as soon as they can. So any delays impact them with innovation and marketing of new varieties, but also financially will impact them as well. We want to avoid that as much as possible. Incomplete and late data packages or non-compliant plots lead to delays for rejection in VCU and DUS. The risk of missing seed submission deadlines due to delays. This is a common problem that we see across PVS currently. We often have breeders submitting seed excuse me, late in the day, and so any delays in that will push it beyond seed submission deadlines. We sometimes have to be flexible to allow some movement due to, you know, issues outside of our control. Repeated missed deadlines and document errors and late data erode the UK's reputation as a reliable partner in international collaborative testing. So, you know, this is key to us, and it's important for us to have an efficient and effective system whereby material can move seamlessly from country to country to allow us to do our work. And there is some reputational damage involved in not being able to do that seamlessly. Compounded trials, logistics and regulatory slippages lengthen the time to registration, again creating gaps of potential revenue streams for breeders. And lastly, the potential loss of trial material for non-conformity for documentary entries leads to trial delays and failure, and incurred additional costs for replacements and penalties. So they're the impacts. How do we resolve such issues? So I alluded to a change in our relationship with the EU 6 years ago, and we're currently looking at a change to our relationship with the EU and how we control movement via the UK and EU. And so the SPS agreement or the EU reset is currently being looked at, and a lot of that will remove some of these barriers. So currently, you know, we talked about inspection, increased additional inspections and testing regimes. Most of that will be removed. Lots of import inspections will be reduced or removed in their entirety, so releasing material far quicker and simpler to move. So that's coming down the pipeline. I can't give any more detail than that. Currently, we're still working closely with DEFRA colleagues and others on how this will look. but it's gaining pace, and the agreement is expected to take effect from mid-2027. I think also we have, this is obviously just EU, but in the UK, and I know my Japanese colleague alluded to it earlier as well, with quarantine and research facilities. In the UK, we have a system called scientific licensing, in which material for research purposes only from third countries mostly can be brought in with accompanying paperwork that precludes some of these issues, i.e. traces, NT and phytosanitary measures, and they have a letter of authority which accompanies them under the understanding that they are only for research purposes and not to be propagated and further multiplied and marketed. So there is an area there which we can investigate for third country material. So the EU Reset SPS agreement could cover some of the EU issues we're facing, and potential for scientific licensing for third country materials is certainly an avenue we can investigate. And I think that's it. So I would just like to thank Louise Everest of BSPB, the British Society of Plant Breeders, and the UK PHSI, the Plant Health and Disease Inspector, in supporting me and helping me with these examples. They've been very good with that. And thank you all for your attention.